Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Oh, I'll never get this done. Yes, it's the...
Somebody's caught my giggles.
I know. Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 755 for the 26th of March 2023. Richard Saunders coming to you from Harbourside, Sydney, Australia, under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I'm with Adrienne Hill. Hello, Adrienne.
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's great to be here. It's great to see you here. And coming up on this week's show, Maynard Spooky Action at Skeptics in the Pub interviews you.
Yes, he does. And what a great interviewer he is. Though I have to say, it was hard to keep my brain moving as fast as his.
And as the bus goes by, if you go to the Facebook page of the Skeptic Zone podcast, you can actually see the interview of Maynard interviewing you.
And me giggling a lot.
What a shock. What a shock that is. Also, Maynard interviews lots of people at Skeptics in the Pub and asks the big question, should skeptics concentrate on the good old-fashioned skeptical topics like UFOs and monsters and ESP and all that sort of stuff. After that, you're back, Adrienne, and you're back to read the Australian Skeptics Newsletter under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And
what a pleasant place to do such a task. I wish I could do it every 2 weeks.
It's a beautiful afternoon here. The people are going by, the sun is here, the trains are going over the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's quite something. We're at Dawes Point for those people who want to check us out on the map. And then to round off the show, it's back to the Trove archives where I'm going to look at general paranormal, because that's an old-fashioned skepticism thing, general paranormal.
Absolutely. It's a good one. Oldie but goodie.
It's an oldie but goodie. Now, I think it's time for us to sit here and drink our root beer. Thank you. Oh, where's mine?
Yes.
Cheers. Yum, yum. I like that. And while we do that, we hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, everyone's hopping and rushing and crushing because we've got the big guest from Alberta in Canada. That's right, it's the president of Alberta. Great to have you here. I hear you have a lot of exports, oil and coal you're here to talk to us about, so obviously you're a big thing of global warming. Completely wrong. Apparently, we've got a change of star now. It's actually Adrienne Hill. Great to have you here. Now, we've been enjoying you in this country. I believe you've been working at a number of coffee shops as a barista in Sydney. How's it been going?
Oh, that's wonderful. The coffee here is great. No issues at all.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's the first thing most people from the great continent of the USA say to us is that we have great coffee. What's the problem with the coffee in Canada?
Canada and the US, it's kind of like lukewarm swamp water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where I actually was not a coffee drinker until I went to Europe.
Wow, okay.
And actually discovered what coffee was.
Because they have the cocaine coffee. You have the coffee that's like that much in a cup and it blows your mind. You wait for 3 days.
It's awesome.
Now, how did you get involved with skepticism and what are you doing in Australia? Why has skepticism brought you to Australia?
Well, skepticism didn't really bring me to Australia. Isn't that awful?
Oh, okay. What? Oh.
Yeah, we were actually booked to come here, and then the pandemic happened, and then I met Richard, and then skepticism brought me here. Oh. So we rebooked our trip, and this time I knew people here, which was really exciting. Oh. So I got to meet Tim Mendham too.
Oh, that was very exciting. A lot of people come to Australia just to meet Tim Mendham, and bloody hell are they disappointed, let me tell you. And I believe it'd be a downer, the Americans might say. But
yes.
What's the thing that rings your bell skeptical? What's the thing that you go, oh, that's the topic I really like to talk about, or that's the thing that grinds my skeptical gears?
Well, originally it was alternative medicine, but then when I became a Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia editor, it became ghosts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, haunting, spirit photography, haunted houses.
Well, ghosts are an interesting one because they can be virtually anything. They can just be a room that's a bit cold sometimes.
Or a spot on a photo. a little orb.
That's true.
Yep.
Yes, orbs. And then they blow them right up, and then you get pareidolia, like they see something in there.
Exactly. Or they don't even see anything. It's just a little spot on the photo.
So have you ever had any sort of unnerving sort of paranormal experience yourself that can't be easily explained?
No.
Well, I haven't really either. But
I've lived a boring life, apparently.
Yes, she's lived a boring life. Did we mention she's from Canada?
Yeah,
That's
right.
compulsory. But Alberta would be a place where there'd be a fair bit of controversy about global warming because it's a big coal and oil pumping place.
Absolutely, yep.
In fact, it's got dirty coal, hasn't it? It's got that coal tar stuff.
Oh, you mean from the oil sands?
Yes.
Yeah. Lots of misinformation.
Yeah.
As usual for anything.
Doesn't most of US oil come from Canada, not from the Middle East?
That I don't know.
Because it wouldn't surprise me.
I wouldn't be surprised either. But I wouldn't know, actually.
Oh, right. Well, I don't know either. I'm just saying stuff.
Well, you're very good at saying stuff, Maynard.
Well, tell us what you've been up to in Sydney while you've been here. You haven't been working as a barista. I was completely misinformed about that. What have you been doing? And how would you sell Australia to your fellow Albertans watching? Because I know they're all looking.
Well, we're upside down, and we're a day ahead, and we're living in the future.
What do you think of the Southern Hemisphere stars
The
field?
stars really flew us, or confused us, because we were looking at Orion's belt, but it was sideways.
Yeah. So it's all completely different stargazing here.
It's wonderful.
What about us Aussies? Are we a particular blend of something that you've seen before? A lot of people say, "Oh, it's a mix of England and America." You lot, because you've got American-looking cars, but you speak a bit like the English, and you're a bit odd.
Well, the driving is always very English, of course,
very
because
English.
you have to. And I like how, like in England, you have look right and left for us people coming who get confused and might get hit by a car if we look the wrong way. So that's handy.
Okay.
And I think, I don't know.
Okay.
Much the same. Happy people.
Look, now, are you still the world's greatest booster of maple syrup?
Yes. Absolutely. And we have to rectify the problem with Richard. Using Australian maple syrup, it just doesn't work.
Right. Well, see, we've become Vegemite here, which is completely different. It's a yeast-based thingy, like Bonox or something like that. But so maple syrup comes from what?
Maple trees.
Right. How does it get so sugary?
I think
look, as someone who's sucked on a fair bit of bark for most of their life, it's never been a sweet experience.
No, it's not the bark. It's inside the tree.
That's where I've been going wrong.
And it's not in Alberta. You have to go to Quebec to get the maple syrup. It's a long way away from where I live.
Quebec. Wow, okay. What was it about Quebec? They're Canadian and French, so they're arrogant and boring. No, sorry, polite and French. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything you've got a message to Australia here? Because skepticism in this country, it's not as big as it should be. I'm sure everybody's a skeptic in Canada.
I wish that was true. I wish it was true.
So what's the big fight in there, skeptically?
Probably all the same things as here. It's anti-vaccination. We saw that today out in Manly Beach.
That's right. Because we're having a state election in New South Wales at the moment, and there is a party which is the Informed Medical Opinion Party or something, which is basically the name for the anti-vax party.
Yeah, well, we have an election coming up as well, and our leader is a little not skeptical, shall we say? What's happening right now in Alberta? She wasn't actually voted in. The premier resigned, and she got voted in by her party. But I'll have to show you a little photo of her later on. She made a little bit of a funny mistake buying a bus.
Buying a bus? Now, did she think it was an electric bus and it turned out to be like a turbo diesel bus or something?
No, she had this mural put on that was very large. With
one of those ones.
Face, and her the wheels were very strategically placed.
Wow.
And nobody noticed until it started touring.
See, politicians have got to be careful with buses. The same thing happened with Brexit. They painted a slogan on there, which no one's forgotten, which was a complete lie. Yeah.
That's right. Same idea. So, and this woman is really into naturopathy and all those types of things, and would like to treat our healthcare system with it.
Right. Because I imagine there'd be a fairly, to get a bit political, there'd be a fairly strong right wing in Alberta. Yeah.
Yes, that tends to be. though we're really hopeful that that's going to change, because this woman, I think, has stretched a lot of people a little too far.
And the bus was the final straw.
Well, that was a while ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah, this is just one of many things.
All right. See, because when I think of Canada, I think of Mr. Trudeau.
Yes.
And
He's
the
got
fact
nice hair.
Yeah, he's got great hair. He's got fantastic hair. And I got to say, but people have started yelling at him in the streets. I've sort of seen a few videos of that. That's not good.
I didn't know they were yelling in the streets.
Oh, because the non-skeptical podcasts play people yelling at him in the streets, yes. But mainly in the capital city, where I imagine it'd be fairly mixed.
Yeah.
Toronto. That is the capital city. Is it Toronto? Have I got the right capital?
Nope.
Okay. So Toronto's where
Like Sydney's the capital of Australia, right?
It's a bit like that, right? So I'm sure, now it's not Quebec, because that's Quebec.
That's right. It's not Quebec.
No, it's Alberta. No, I'm sure Ottawa.
Yeah.
Named after the Oriental small-clawed otter, which is a little-known fact.
Wow.
And they went, Ottawa, like that. Look, look, I can't speak Canadian, but that's the way it goes. But look, the question we're asking everybody tonight is, should skeptics concentrate on the old school stuff, like the UFOs, the ghosts, the auras, all that sort of thing, ancient aliens, or should they move on to perhaps some new topics and maybe ones that are even tinged with politics even?
I think they should cover them all, because they all can do harm.
What's the latest one you've seen online with your work with the guerrilla skeptics? Because you've seen all the stuff, you've seen the latest stuff that's coming up on the Wikipedia.
Yeah.
What is the latest one?
Probably a lot of things about psychics. That's what Susan Gerbic is really focusing on right now.
Yes, and I think her work's very good in that area. But in some ways, you think, oh yeah, that's so 50 years ago, but not the case.
Oh, and also the mass psychogenic illness with the Havana syndrome, and there's also a possibility that the Iran poisonings of the girls is also mass psychogenic illness. We don't know. But
although you can't blame them for being suspicious of the government. I don't blame Iranian schoolgirls for being suspicious of the government poisoning them, because, I mean, come on. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of fact, Yeah.
No, but the frightening thing is, if it is, they've already arrested 5 people, and who knows what will happen with those 5 people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh. Well, look, and look, have you got a final message for Australia? I mean, look, this is the big chance. This is a big
chance.
Yep, sell yourself to Australia. If it's a good enough message, we might ask you back.
Oh, awesome. I think it's a great country. I've loved it, and I love all the wildlife. It's amazing.
All right, after the camera's off, we'll show you some wildlife. Well, look, who am I here with here?
My name's Sue Yarachi, and I'm skeptical by nature and working in medicine by profession.
Oh, well, you'd be skeptical about a lot of things, and working in medicine, you'd have to put up with a lot of woo.
I certainly do, and I spend way too much time on social media arguing against the woo and trying to correct false information.
Oh, so you're really into wasting your time?
Definitely. So I think in our cohort, if we convert 1% of readers, then we think that's a success.
Yeah, because it's really difficult, isn't it?
It certainly is, but not for want of trying. And, of course, arguing's addictive, so it's got its own rewards.
So how do you think about such general things that are kind of hard to argue against, like, oh, I'm into mindfulness? I mean, it's hard to argue for mindfulness, let alone argue against mindfulness. Have you heard that a bit?
I certainly have, and the way that I deal with it is I make a distinction between complementary therapies that can improve well-being as opposed to alternative medicines which are claimed to cure things. So I don't mind if people are mindful or do yoga or meditation as a way of improving their general mental health or well-being, but I don't approve of specific medical claims about those modalities. But then the more rational people who do those things don't claim that they cure illness. They're just promoting them as general well-being, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, that just sounds a bit sensible.
It does, doesn't it? And it's amazing how rational people on our side can be.
I've been asking people, as Richards want me to ask tonight, about whether skeptics should really concentrate much on the classic skeptical things like your ghosts and your chariots of the gods, your ancient astronauts things, your UFOs and that sort of thing, or whether they should move on to some new things, some new challenges.
And I qualify my answer by saying both yes and no. And what I mean by that is that I think we need to expend energy in proportion to where the misinformation appears to be at the moment. And it seems to be fashionable in society to have moved away from UFOs and green men and more towards false claims about particularly health cures, but also the conspiracies about human nature and how people are influencing our behaviour.
Oh, right. I really love the Project Bluebeam conspiracy. I think Project Bluebeam is a pretty wild one.
Bluebeam I'm not so much aware of, but I'm really conscious that conspiracies now relate to technology.
Yes.
So early technology about space UFOs was from a time that space was something we were just conquering, and now we've got social media and so much more almost miraculous technology that the conspiracies have moved on with the technology.
And they've broadened from like really wide ones of like, oh, they are trying to get us to do something, to really specific things like, I think something's going on while my garbage wasn't picked up this week.
Yes, that's right, and I think that's how people personalise the uncertainty and confusion to their own lives. So they seek out something that's a general principle that they can use as a tool and localise it to their own concerns.
Do you think it's part of people wanting to be special for something? Everybody wants to be special, and people seem to want to talk about their ailments a lot more than they used to. Or maybe it's just the age of the people I know, where everybody wants to go, oh yes, I've just been diagnosed with ADHD or whatever, or something like that. And well, before you keep it to yourself and talk to your friends, but now you make a big announcement about it on social media.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because there's always been a culture of people making themselves special by having a disability. And in the past, it could be I'm a cardiac patient, or I have to take 10 tablets, or I have to take an insulin injection. And the way I interpret that is that people who feel disempowered in their general life are looking for a reason to be special and also to have sympathy from the general population.
And also, if they feel powerless in their life, that's the thing that they can have a power over. They can deal with what they're dealing with, and I'd like to tell people about it.
Yes, exactly that. And by telling people about it, they also get kudos from the people around them by showing their agency and influence.
Oh. Yeah, I keep my problems to myself, because if I told people, no one's going to be sympathetic about what I got. But maybe that's just me.
I keep my problems to myself because I don't consider them of any great importance, and I keep my optimism by just considering myself to be healthy and well.
Well, I guess because you work in the medical field, you spend all day with people working with them like that. You don't really need that when you get home.
That's true, but I've also found as I've got older that the most I can do for people with ailments is encourage them to feel like well people and reassure them.
Well, look, thank you for answering. Enjoy Adrienne's talk tonight.
You're most welcome. Good to talk. Bye.
Yeah, so who have we got here?
This is Stephen Bavaro, regular listener. Some people may have heard me interviewed by Richard before, and I spoke at Skepticon on pseudo-archaeology, and I've written a couple of forum pieces for the Skeptic magazine on pseudo-archaeology. So it's sort of a pet topic of mine as I'm studying archaeology and ancient history at Macquarie University.
And you're wearing a Joy Division T-shirt, so their favourite song would be She's Lost Control, obviously.
Perhaps, although I really like Atmosphere, but yeah, they were great bands.
Okay, I just thought I'd have to ask that one there, because there's always a sceptical question around Joy Division. But when skeptics, should skeptics continue with some of the classics, like the ancient archaeology, like for example with Brian Hancock and
Graham Hancock.
Sorry, with Graham Hancock and his Ancient Apocalypse show, or
Eric
with
von Daniken,
Yep.
and all the other classics.
Yeah.
And look, Maynard.
Or should we move on?
Well, Maynard, that's a good question. If you'd asked me even 5 years ago, I would have said that's sort of dead and buried. Like there's a lot of more pressing modern challenges. Unfortunately, and hopefully you'd agree, I'm sure most other skeptics would agree, a lot of those classics refuse to go away. They hang around. They almost niggle us. They're very hard to get rid of, and a lot of them making comeback. Things like a flat Earth, but even we thought that we'd buried the idea of anti-vax. It was a very much a fringe thing, and now that's making a comeback. But yeah, definitely the ancient aliens is very popular. and obviously ancient apocalypse, all that pseudo-archaeology. So unfortunately, we can't totally ignore the classics because they can come back to bite us, especially the flat earth. But here's the thing. There's no law that says we can't devote our attention to that and the more modern challenges. As I say, you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So you're going to ask the
Well, I'm here up the back table. That's where all the naughty kids are, like the school bus. And do you think skeptics should really concentrate on stuff like, the ghosts, the UFOs, all those things, Eric von Daniken, the classic old ones, or whether we should look at something new or do something? What do you think?
I'm glad you mentioned Eric von Daniken, actually.
Oh, look, I've got to mention it. I've got to mention and the other guy who's, I was about to say Hitchens. No, who's the guy who's just done the new one about the ancient apocalypse?
Oh, yes.
Because... Yeah.
No. But my parents took me to Eric von Daniken. Was about 12 or 13.
I might be able to outdo you because my mum took me to Mr. Spoonbender when he toured Australia. Uri Geller. I saw Uri Geller at the Civic Theatre in Newcastle. Yes. I remember him saying that in years to come, this will be the way we do everything with our mind. Yeah, well, right, anyway. But they took you to the movie, did they?
Yes.
That has a great soundtrack, I've got to say. Chariots of the God has a really, really nice, epic soundtrack.
Yeah, because I think that's how you should determine your logical...
And just for the listeners at home, William Shatner narrated the follow-up movie to that, by the way. Yeah, something of the gods, something of the whatever, and Shatner narrates it. And he's in it as well.
So you had Shatner, and you had Leonard Nimoy doing In Search Of and all that.
Oh, God, yes.
So all the Star Trek...
They had a dark side. But do you think we should think about those things and think about Shatner and the classical moments, or whether we should move on?
No, we need to. I have a background in safety. There was a guy called Trevor Kletz, and he wrote 1,000 articles, and they were on the same things over and over and again about things you need to do to be safe. And people, I think, used to say, why did he do that? And I think the reason is there are always people who need, that information always needs to be out there. There are always new people who are unaware of Eric von Daniken and those types of things. So there needs to be that constant push against the constant flow of woo that we have.
Well, yes, because that new show has only just come out, Ancient Apocalypse, which is a bit of a reworking of the von Daniken stuff.
Yeah, because you have to wait till near the end until he sort of is giving a wink to Atlantis and stuff like that.
Yes.
But it's interesting that stuff online. I think the guy's name on YouTube is currently doing I think he's doing like an hour rebuttal on every episode, which is quite interesting. I think.
Well, it takes that long too, because it takes a while to unwind all they've said and go through it one by one.
Yeah. So definitely, I think we need to keep doing it, because otherwise there are people coming up who will think, yeah, well, why not? I guess Recce is true.
This water really is magic.
Yeah, and there's no rebuttal against it. It must be true then.
Okay, thank you. It was the highest note I could play on the trombone, actually. We're just having a musical conversation here, and everyone's right to be sceptical about my ability in music, which is almost zero. But I don't make any claims, that's for sure. But, sir, what do you think we should be doing skeptically? Should we be going with the classics or moving on to new frontiers?
I actually think we've probably got an issue that the debunking of these things is associated with skepticism or with the branding of skeptics. I think that actually makes an us and them sort of dichotomy that would be useful to sort of overcome. So I'm a little concerned when we do go against things like ghosts or whatever, that it becomes, the skeptics don't believe in them and the religious people, I don't know, the other people do. And I feel like that sort of, the dichotomy being associated with a group is actually a bit divisive.
I think you've got a real point there. I listen to a lot of paranormal podcasts, and I hear them say, well, skeptics say, and everyone's lumped together, and I'm just wondering, I wonder who they are. Is it 3 people in that place I go to the meeting with them, or is it a bunch of other people that I don't know? And it is actually, a bit of us and them, but do you think there's a way, what do you think would be the best way to bridge that? Because I don't know. I mean, I listen to both sides, and I hear everybody slagging off everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And everyone attacks straw men, which are very easy to attack. So I don't have a solution, Maynard.
I came up the back because I thought you'd have a solution.
No.
You mean I'm going to have to go up the front? Okay,
Yeah,
but I think you've got a very good point there, and also I think, and many skeptics have mentioned, and Brian Dunning's particularly mentioned, if you take something away from someone, try and replace it with something.
A great idea, but again, the personality or the branding or the where someone is coming from and how you've labelled them is going to affect how they react. So giving something to someone who had that belief when you're giving it as a skeptic, I think is problematic. I think, to be honest, I would just like to see this type of approach to problems going well beyond the skeptical community, and I really don't know how to do that. We've tried it since I was a kid. I've certainly seen it my whole life, and it never works, so I have no solution, just reframing the problem.
Are you sceptical about my shirt?
Oh, no, I love you. You've got a little sign there showing your website. So
yes.
That's amazing branding.
Look, and my shirt's actually a whole bunch of pictures taken from astounding science fiction, I think. It looks like 50s or 70s comics, and they've all put them together and made it into a shirt.
Yeah, lovely and retro and hand-drawn. Beautiful.
Good. I just had to get that in because I know it's an audio podcast, so you people at home can't hear it, so...
Hey, Adrienne.
Hi, Susan. Out for some shopping, eh?
Yep, I'm stocking up on this imitation maple syrup from Australia.
Imitation? Imitation? No. You need to buy the real thing from Canada.
But I saw the TV commercial, and it said that noted pancake-eating expert Richard Saunders says it's the best maple syrup money can buy, and 60% of people preferred it in a blind taste test. Everyone knows it's the best.
Oh, come on, Susan. You know better than that. That's the argument from authority.
It is?
Or is it the argument from popularity? It might be another logical fallacy. I'm not sure.
Really? If only we had a way of finding out.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my, it's the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
Yes, that's right. But how did you know who I am?
I listened to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Also, didn't you used to be the tooth fairy?
Oh, yes. I remember you. I'll never forget your left upper lateral incisor. Would you like it back?
No, it's okay. You keep it.
Hey, skeptical fairy godmother angel. What are you doing here in the supermarket?
I've come to tell you that you can find out about 40 different logical fallacies on YouTube in one handy location. Listen to each one to hear an explanation and examples of how they might be used.
Oh.
Just go to tinyurl.com/logicalzone and you'll find all the logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma with handy time codes to get to the exact one you want.
Who is Michelle Bickersma?
Oh, just a friend of mine.
tinyurl.com/logicalzone. Thank you, skeptical fairy godmother angel. I guess you'll disappear in a puff of smoke and thunder now, eh?
Not quite yet. I have a bit of shopping to do. Susan?
Yes?
Where do I find the Australian maple syrup?
What? No. Come with me, so-called skeptical fairy. This is real maple syrup from Canada. Made with real maple. Hello everyone, this is Adrienne Hill, here to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics Newsletter, and I'm reading this newsletter under the beautiful Sydney Harbour Bridge, sitting next to Richard Saunders, drinking A&W zero sugar root beer. Life couldn't be better. Is that a good start?
That's pretty good.
This is newsletter number 169. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now, let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all, says Tim. The dates for Skepticon 2023 have been released, so put December 2nd through 3rd in your diary. It's a possibility that the event will be simultaneously in person and streamed. Details on speakers, prices, and format will be released when they become available. And Adrienne, that's me, who reads out this newsletter on the Skeptic Zone, should make sure she brings lots of lemon liniment. Thanks, Tim.
Oh, Tim, you're a wag, Tim, you really are.
Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, I'll do just that. Skepticon 2023, December 2nd through 3rd in Melbourne. This year's Australian Skeptics National Annual Convention, or Skepticon, is being organised by the Victorian Skeptics. They have announced that 2023 convention will be held at the Brain Centre, Melbourne University, on December 2nd through 3rd. Full details, such as speakers and prices, are still to be issued, though it is likely that it will be a simultaneous, in-person and live-streamed event, as was the case with Skepticon 2022 last year in Canberra. Mexico to push traditional medicine. Health authorities in Mexico have said they will use more traditional medicine in the country's woefully under-equipped public hospital system. The head of Mexico's largest public hospital network said that the system will hire 753 practitioners of traditional massage and herbal treatments. The Social Security Institute will also employ curanderos, who are non-licensed healers who use bundles of herbs, smoke, alcohol, and eggs to draw sickness out of the bodies of their patients. The hospitals and clinics will also employ midwives and people who practice a traditional form of chiropractic medicine. Apparently, they won't necessarily be licensed professionals. Instead, they will, quote, base their treatment on ancestral knowledge, end quote, according to a statement by the office of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Obrador is the same person who earlier this year claimed a belief in mythical Mayan creatures. The COVID lab leak hypothesis. Did a lab leak in the Wuhan Institute of Virology cause the COVID-19 pandemic? There have been concerns for some time about the safety and security of the lab in question, as stated by the U.S. State Department. Additionally, journalists and U.S. Senate staffers have used the opacity of the government of China as a reason to distrust and even disregard data that was used in studies that cleared the lab. However, an article from the UK Skeptic suggests there is still enough evidence to be doubtful of the lab leak hypothesis. Interesting. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress has voted unanimously to declassify all intelligence info, but that will likely not be available for some months. And for the second time in a week, a new poll shows Americans support the lab leak hypothesis. A Quinnipiac University poll shows Americans side with the leak view by 64% yes versus 22% no. And a recent Economist/YouGov poll showed an even stronger split in favor of a lab leak, which was 66 to 16%. Psychedelics' impact on supernatural beliefs. A recent study published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology found that for those who had used psychedelics in the past, even one dose can result in lasting belief changes about the supernatural or non-physical world. Specifically, the findings revealed significant increases in beliefs related to mind-body dualism, paranormal or spiritual phenomena, and consciousness. Quote, "These findings provide further evidence of the consequences of psychedelic use and its potential as a therapeutic intervention," end quote. Studies have shown that psilocybin can cause immediate mystical experiences and long-lasting improvements in an individual's spirituality. However, despite the increasing attention given to researching this topic, only a limited number of studies have tackled the specific types of beliefs that are influenced by the use of psychedelics, end quote. Hello, train. We're not sure what, quote, improvements in spirituality, end quote, means. Don't call me skeptic. A thoughtful piece from the UK Skeptic on dealing with that sometimes problematic title that we use. Should we embrace the skeptic label or focus on the work of being skeptical? Tragic TV ghost hoax revolutionized horror genre. This is an article on the BBC's Ghostwatch media hoax from 1992, which the article says, quote, takes its place shoulder to shoulder with Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio drama from 1938, end quote. The Halloween special followed a team of paranormal researchers studying a haunted house in the London borough of Northolt, a departure from cliched castles and crypts. Quote, in hindsight, the cinematography and acting clearly gives away the farce, end quote. Though not everyone was able to pick up on the cues back in 1992, possibly leading to at least one suicide. Sad. The science of The Last of Us. Fungi that cause ants to go feral, eat the butts off cicadas, and cause psychedelic hallucinations. All part of a hit TV show. But should we fear a fungi zombie pandemic? A long but good article on the science of the threat from fungi. The March issue of The Skeptic magazine is out with a feature that responds to the regularly raised issue, quote, why bother, end quote. Our response could be that the skeptical movement, whether that means Australian skeptics or the broader capital S skeptical community, has had significant successes, and it is always developing new ways and approaches to tune its approach. Not to mention the little matter of defending the truth. But it is always important to look for relevance, not to rest on any laurels, and to innovate in delivering the skeptical message. Apart from that, we look at ways psychics can fool you, a classic look at confronting Uri Geller, and controversial career of the most famous exorcist of the last 50 years. You can read the article by European Skeptics President Claire Klingenberg on the way ahead for skeptics as a sample from the March issue. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. You can sign up for a hard copy or digital edition, or both. The digital is offered free to those who take up the hard copy version. Contact the editor if you're not sure if your existing subscription needs renewing. Items of interest. More than 20 schoolgirls were recently reported to be hospitalized after playing with Ouija boards at their school in Colombia. The girls were taken to the hospital after having anxiety attacks. Hugo Torres, head of the Galeras Educational Institute, said, quote, alarm bells went off once the girls, who were allegedly playing with the Ouija boards, were reported to be suffering signs of fainting, anxiety, and other symptoms within the school grounds, end quote. They were immediately admitted to a municipal hospital nearby, accompanied by parents and school faculty. While some online commentators warned of the demonic powers of the boards, others suggested it might be more a case of hysteria spreading through the school community. One mother cleared up at least one theory, quote, our children always have a good breakfast, and it cannot be said that what's happening is due to lack of food, end quote. Oh, she has a point. That's good. Psychic fertility sites. Spiritual help for expectant parents, including those suffering infertility. Not just grief vampires, but birth vampires as well. Shame. Top 4 paranormal mysteries of Asia. Quote, the proof is out there, end quote, they say. Interesting videos, but not paranormal and not mysteries. But nonetheless, they are, at least in Asia. Uri Geller's Paranormal Palace up for sale. You gonna buy it, Richard?
Yep. I certainly am.
If you have a spare £8 million, you might think about buying Uri Geller's palatial Thames side home in the UK. Looks like a nice place, But if you buy it, make sure you buy your own cutlery.
Oh, Tim. He's a funny guy.
Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill from Canada, from Sydney, under the beautiful Sydney Harbour Bridge. Signing off.
She did it. I don't believe it. She did it.
Hi, this is Dr. Pamela Gay from Astronomy Cast. Each week, Fraser Kane and I take our listeners on a fact-based journey through the cosmos. With our weekly podcast, we explain not just what we know, but how we know what we know about this universe that we share. Check us out at astronomycast.com and look for us in iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you download podcasts. See you online.
Once again to dive back into those pages at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia. Those busy people digitising millions of articles, reports, going back decades and decades. Now these are gathered from Australian publications, and what an invaluable resource it is. And this week I thought we'd take a look at, well, a paranormal grab bag really, bits and pieces. And our first entry comes from The Age from Victoria, dated the 18th of September 1947. Science takes an interest in ghosts. If you can predict the winner of the Melbourne Cup or have a mystical power to foretell other coming events, a group of scientists and philosophers at Melbourne University wish to hear from you. They have formed a Society for Psychical Research to study psychic powers. Perhaps you are able to transmit your thoughts to other people or know what your partner is thinking in a friendly game of cards. Maybe you are more adept at water divining or instantaneous calculation. In any case, particulars of your strange ability are needed. Recent reports of thought transmission have stirred the society to action. In Holland this week, a man is stated to have upset a symphony orchestra by transmitting his thoughts to players. The first Society for Psychical Research was formed 65 years ago in London by a group of scientists and philosophers. Last year, Trinity College, Cambridge, made its first award for a scholarship for psychical research. In Melbourne, little has been done to date, but the scientists and philosophers who compose the society hope to enlist the aid of Piddington, a Sydney mental telepathist, to commence their practical research. And more about Piddington in a moment. The Melbourne Society is the first of its kind in Australia, and it proposes to undertake scientific investigation of telepathy, clairvoyance, psychometry, poltergeist, psychokinesis, mediumship, and similar subjects. Any persons gifted with psychic powers or knowing other who have such ability are asked to collect all details and as much collaborative evidence as possible. Personal information will be treated as confidential. Communications should be addressed to the Secretary of the Society, Mr. M.J. Scriven, Trinity University of Melbourne, Carlton, N3. Now, it's possible this story seems familiar. I might have reported on this maybe a year or two back, but just briefly, for those who don't know, Piddington, the Piddingtons, Mr. Piddington and his wife, was a famous mentalism act in the post-war years in Australia, and they made it very big in the UK with their mentalism act, very famous radio stars. But it was, of course, a mentalism act, mentalism being a very fascinating facet of the conjuring arts. And now we turn to the world's news from Sydney, dated the 12th of October 1946. America's fortune tellers are on the crest of a wave. These are boom days for fortune tellers in America. It has been estimated that credulous citizens are tossing some £100 million a year to palmists, astrologists, trance mediums, and other forecasters of the future. By H. Canning Green from New York. One of the biggest booms sweeping this boom country is fortune-telling. Dramatically, perhaps tragically, the business of fortune-telling and future for a price is gathering momentum, and it rolls along its superstitious way. The gypsy, who used to read tea leaves and starve, has now become Madame Zoroaster. At her door is a uniformed and very proper footman. She orders swanky clothes from the swankiest stores, travels in a handsome limousine, complete with a liveried chauffeur. There's money, lots of it, in fortune-telling. Two Madame Zoroaster and her sister fortune-tellers, astrologers and spirit readers in darkened rooms all over America, go increasing numbers of distraught men and women to seek the answers to questions like these. Quote, "Did my husband have a sweetheart in Germany?" End quote. Quote, "Can you get word through to my son that I am caring for his little family?" End quote. Quote, "Should I marry Jim, or does he drink too much?" End quote. This current prosperity of the fortune-teller signifies a disturbed, a hesitating America, says a man who knows. His name is John R. Saunders. Good grief. His name is John R. Saunders. I must... Well, you can tell I read these cold. That's a bit of a surprise. Okay. And he is Associate Curator of Education at the American Museum of Natural History. Superstitions are Mr. Saunders' hobby. He has tracked down thousands of them, studied their origin, their effects. Mr. Saunders cites some telling figures. "It is estimated," he says, "that Americans spend annually at least £100 million on their superstitions. In the United States, many thousands of seers are practicing their dubious arts. Their biggest year was 1945. The price for palm reading, a spirit setting, varies from $5 to $50. In Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, poor, believing people last year spent $1 million on magic charms, love potions. In Washington, 100,000 customers weekly consult the capital's astrologers. Some of our most prominent people," Mr. Saunders said, "have patronized fortune-tellers of one kind or another. Evangeline Adams, the astrologer, made £20,000 a year. J.P. Morgan, Miss Leslie Cotter, Mary Garden, and Richard Harding Davis were among her clients." On a horoscope, the Duke of Windsor cancelled a trip some years ago. Hitler kept at Berchtesgaden a teeming nest of fortune-tellers. Mussolini, Napoleon, Hitler, Julius Caesar, Alexander, each believed in them and talked about his star. It is still told in Washington how President Harding and his wife had a personal seer forecast for them weekly at the White House. Just how reliable fortune-tellers are is revealed by the experience of Miss Carola K, and there's a dash, so we have to understand that her name's been redacted, a young actress in Hollywood. For double assurance, she consulted two astrologers, explaining, quote, "I come under the influence of Capricorn, so I ask, shall I marry Jim?" To one astrologer, Capricorn said, "Yes, go ahead, Jim is the man," end quote. Quote, the second had a totally different answer. "Hold off Jim like you would the plague," end quote. The gypsy in the soiled bandana, promising a client a rich husband, all for a 50-cent reading, has now vanished. Today you get very little for $5. For $7.50, you get a bit of the past and the present. For $10, you get the future too. Voodoo becomes fashionable. The future is what most Americans are worrying about today. What are the favoured methods nowadays of dipping into the future? 1. There's the spirit ember method. You write facts on a paper, which supposedly is burned. Later, these facts plus predictions are given back to you. 2. Psychometry, which is also modern and popular. An inquiring company, you among them, place a personal possession on the table. By your emanations and your possessions' emanations, the reader tells you what is in store for you. 3. Your horoscope. The ancient Greeks, Egyptians, Indians, Chinese worked up a science of astrology. Its words are hard, its symbols cryptic. 4. The spirits. In a trance detached from the earth, the medium summons her control out of the misty void. They give her your message. 5. Herb doctors. Voodoo. These seem to be the superstitions particularly popular in rural areas. If you believe that fortune-telling is confined largely to grieving women and lovelorn girls, you are wrong. It flourishes now in Washington, D.C., where a number of prominent legislators are reported to have their personal seers. One congressman has his horoscope cast weekly at his office. By its dictates, he votes for this bill against that. So wasn't that interesting? And Mr. John R. Saunders, whose hobby was superstitions, way back in 1946. Now, I might look up Mr. John R. Saunders, at the time the Associate Curator of Education at the American Museum of Natural History. I wonder if he left a record. And finally, we turn to The Worker, a magazine, a newspaper called The Worker from Brisbane in Queensland, dated the 9th of October, 1950. Victorian horsewomen telepathic. And of course, this is referring to the state of Victoria in Australia. Victoria's best horsewomen have a telepathic link with their mounts, according to Mr. J.T. Riley, a judge at Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane shows. He says this telepathic link enables Victorian horsewomen to attain a higher standard than their menfolk. Your women riders, generally, are the best I have ever seen in competition, he told a Melbourne reporter. At this Melbourne show, horsewomen have shown a kind of telepathy in handling their mounts. They have not failed to use this to produce excellent displays of coordination. I don't know whether this is some adaptation of women's intuition. So there you go, straight from the horse's mouth. A short section, an interesting section of various paranormal and supernatural reports in Australian newspapers from over the decades. And again, I'm very curious to find out about Mr. John R. Saunders. And I found a reference here in the New York Times. John R. Saunders, museum aide, dies. Natural History's education chief set up projects. And this is dated the 5th of May, 1964. With a photograph of John R. Saunders. Unfortunately, I can't access the item completely because I don't have access to those archives. Well, there you go, Mr. John R. Saunders. Thank you for what you did. And I guess that just goes to show, as I've discovered reading this today, that when you visit Trove, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Adrienne, what did you think of this week's show?
It was a blast, probably the most fun I've ever had on the show because I actually got to do it with you instead of from afar.
And not only with me, which is great fun, but not in a studio. We're actually here on the hillside under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. There goes the boat going off, and there's Luna Park on the other side with the swings and roundabouts and everything. Trains are going off on the bridge occasionally.
And dogs are visiting.
It's all happening here. Here comes the ferry. See the ferry over there?
And the
Beautiful.
ferries here are amazing. If any of you come to Sydney who haven't been here, make sure you take multiple ferry rides because they're all fantastic.
I can see two. There are 2 or 3 coming now, and the sailing boats are right there. It's quite a view. Well, Adrienne, what a treat it was for you to come and be at Skeptics in the Pub. Everybody had a great time.
It was fun.
And I think tonight we have a bit of a committee dinner for the Australian Skeptics with you, so that should be great fun. We're recording this on the 24th.
That's correct.
On the 24th of March. It'll go out on the weekend. But for this week, under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, this is Richard Saunders and
Adrienne Hill
signing off. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.
complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.com.au.
What? Don't you know the address by now?
I should.
I'm sorry, listeners, she's doing her best. We've got trucks going behind us. Skeptics.com.au. Now back to Adrienne.
Do I need to say that?
No, I think we got it now. Keep going.
That's awesome.
You should see her dinosaur earrings, my goodness.
Oh, and my Pegasus pin. I'm going to do it again.
All right.
I'm thinking, just what?
Are you like this every time you do the newsletter?
Oh my God.
Giggles?
I laugh so hard. That's why I send you the edited version.
Yeah.
You just go nuts. Oh yeah, and the worst thing is I will read it the day before. And I will still laugh hysterically. And sometimes it will take me 3 or 4 times to read something because it's just so ludicrous.
All right.
All right. Dozens hospitalized after playing with Ouija boards.
Oh, come on. All right.